Excellent, thank you. So I guess because I'm an academic and because I'm a theorist, I like to be very clear about words when I use them, because to me, if I don't say what I mean when I use a word, it doesn't have any meaning. So there are actually 3 words that I'm going to talk about here. Nomadism, I'm trying to be as on topic as possible. That's another thing I like to do if I show up. I'm going to talk about singularities, and I'm going to talk about a word that I made up the other day, archaeotechnologies. And I'm going to try really hard to link these things all together into the topic and make sense. We'll see how I do. So what is a nomad? A lot of the time when we think about a nomad, we think about usually an individual, a wanderer as it says, someone who's sort of going around, they don't know where they've come from, they don't know where they're going, and they don't know why they're going there. A wanderer has no home. But if we've done a little bit of anthropology perhaps, oh my God, you cannot see much of that at all. Oh well. If we've done a bit of anthropology, then what we know is that nomadic people who, or if we think better about nomadism than individual nomads, tend to actually move in cycles. They will go from here to there, and they will follow the seasons. So in fact, nomadic peoples are everywhere at home in their territories rather than nowhere at home. And because they live on territories in a very integrated way, they tend to practice mutual aid. That is, they look out for each other. They tend to practice self-governance. That means if something goes wrong, they fix it together. And they tend to care for the land, because if you're living in that way, if you don't care for each other, if you don't solve your problems and you don't look after the land, you're toast. So what I want to do is compare. Okay, can you make me go to the right? I want to compare that way of living, that nomadic way of living, and nomadic spaces to another kind of space, the state space. So we can see immediately that rather than the land being smooth and open and just a little bit of tracks on it, the land is strided, it's gridded. There's a map, there's squares, there's 82B and 73D and 72M. We can't leave the land alone. We want to know exactly what's going on in there at any given moment in time. There's a password, there's a control. And as you know, you cannot be or do anything these days without the correct password, right? Without entering something in, some numbers and letters. Oh, you're you, and when were you born, and what's your shoe size? What's your mother's maiden name? So we have access, only granted through codes, right? So in that state space, I would say the ultimate archetype of that kind of space is the postmodern city. And I really love this image, because what it shows, in addition to all the grayness, is that this is all human artifacts, all human constructs. There is no nature here. There is not a bit of room for anything that humans have not done. The land is gone. And of course, as opposed to the nomad living in the open, we have the citizen living in the city, wearing the suit, going to work, very worried about what time it is, or going to school, or wherever they're going. And also, they're branded, which is an extremely important thing, because these people live not only in a state society, but in a capitalist society. And we know that in a capitalist society, rather than mutual aid, rather than looking out for each other, the thing we want to do is beat each other. We're in a competition. I want to take your stuff, and you want to take my stuff. And if I take more of your stuff than you take of my stuff, then I'm called successful. And then I get a lot of money, and I feel really guilty, and I give away 20 of my 40 billion to try and solve AIDS. Okay, so that's called a good life in this space. Now, not only do capitalist individuals have to fight with each other, they have to constantly fight with the land. Here's an image of one of the things, the ways in which capitalism relates to the land. It tries to dominate the land, ends up again marking things up, but in a very different way, in this totally unsustainable hell called the Alberta tar sands. So, we have these 2 different ways of doing and being. We have the nomads, and we have the citizens. So it sounds like I'm making an absolute dichotomy, but I hate absolute dichotomies, and every time I see one, I want to try and break it down. So in this case, I'm going to suggest that, in fact, there can be, and has always been, movement between these 2 spaces. One example, Genghis Khan. How many people have heard of Genghis Khan, by the way? Just help me out. See, my girlfriend said no one know who Genghis Khan was. I said, come on, give them some credit here. Okay, so you know that he started out as a nomad in the middle of the Eurasian continent, and he was bopping around doing his thing, but suddenly he got this idea, like, oh man, I should dominate everybody. I should like kill everyone around me. What a great idea. And so he got a bunch of other people who wanted to do that, and they got as far west as Vienna, which is pretty cool when you think about it. And he got as far east as taking over all of what we now know of as China, right? The whole Han Empire. Now, interesting thing happened to him. He went from being a warrior to being a sedentary, to being a bureaucrat, basically. And that really didn't last very long, and then the Chinese took him back over, and he was done, right? Another example, going the opposite direction. Someone who started out as a man of the state and corporation, Osama bin Laden, there he is in his suit, probably looking at a watch, if we could see the rest of him. Something happened to him. He got really tired of Western imperialism. So he took off, got rid of his suit, put on the flak jacket, grew some hair, and became either a freedom fighter or a terrorist, you pick. I'm certainly not going to be the person who says who he was. So what that says, if you could read it, is no one is a pure nomad or a pure citizen. These things intermix, these spaces intermix. And that's going to become something important if I get to the end before I run out of time. Now I'm going to move on to the second term, singularity. In mathematics, that refers to a point in a curve or in a function or in a graph where we don't know what's going on anymore. We got our x's and y's, but we can't find z. Z's gone wacky. Z's gone away. And that's what happens when you go down that tube. You could find your numbers anywhere else on that surface. Once you go into there, basically, you don't know what's going on anymore. Now, this term has been used by people like Ray Kurzweil and Werner Vinge. Ray Kurzweil does a really good TED talk on this, by the way. It's part of what I'm trying to do here is kick his butt. But he does this thing talking about technological nomads coming in again. These are people who are online 24/7 and are constantly multitasking, like both of my teenage kids. And I've noticed like a good, at least one person in every row has been doing and is probably doing right now. Because you cannot let that email come in and not respond. I mean, so what if some idiot is up there prattling on about this and that? You're kind of listening, you can do it. So that's called a technological nomad. And what these guys argue is that we're headed to a point where all of these technologies are going to build up iPod, iPad, this, that. And then a critical point will be reached and a global brain will erupt. And that's going to be really cool. It's so cool that we don't even know what it's going to be like. We can't even imagine it. So it's like we've gone into that tube, right? There's a singularity. We can't see beyond it. And interestingly, this is discussed in terms of exponential growth. I can't see the time anymore, by the way. I'm looking at some kind of wacky screen. Exponential growth in biology and technology. So there's a doubling. 4 billion years ago, we get life. 2 billion years ago, we get multicelled organisms. 1 billion, it's the body plans. And then Kurzweil sets this up. So there's a doubling, constant doubling, which occurs faster. So there's an acceleration of growth. It's exponential, right? Now, usually, growth is good, right? Everybody knows that. We have to have the GNP going up and so on and so forth. So exponential growth must be really good, right? Woohoo, exponential. So it's interesting, if you turn that curve upside down and you have it look like a normal exponential growth curve looks, it looks very familiar. An ecologist, when he saw that, would say, hey, I know what that is. That reminds me of what happened to those reindeer who were sitting on this island, and we killed all the wolves. And there were 29 of them, and their population went way up to like 6,000. But instead of having the global reindeer revolution and hitting something new, the reindeer had a local population crash. It went back to where there was just 42, which is a very magic number. If you've read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, there were just 42 reindeer left at the end. This is what's called the J-curve. In ecology, when you see an exponential rise, don't think you're going to heaven. What you're actually going to do is you're going to hit a limit, you're going to crash, and that's because of what's known as carrying capacity. Every system has a limit. It is impossible for any system to grow forever. Maybe the universe, we don't know. Cosmology is, out on that. But any system that we can build or that we can know is going to hit some kind of limit like that. Why am I talking about that? Even I can't read this one. Because the idea of the technological singularity, taking that technological nomad to the end, relies upon a fantasy space with no limit. The limit is not there. That's why we think we can just keep going and going. So I pose myself this challenge of, okay, what about these great technologies? Like, for example, the smart car. People pay a lot for them, they drive around in them, they feel good. Other people, oh, okay, cool, like you're doing something great here, right? Really good thing. The only thing is, we have to look where the smart car came from. Smart cars have a lot of batteries. Batteries have a lot of lithium. That is a lithium mine in Chile, okay? This is a horrific place. This land is destroyed building smart cars. These are some of the people who work in a similar mine in Bolivia. As you can see, the global corporation is giving them the latest in protective gear, okay? And of course, their children are getting excellent child care. This is the kind of corporation that we all want to be part of. And not only that, but closer to home, where does the electricity come from to run the smart car? From a really stupid place, a coal-fired power plant. All right. So the smart car looks real good if we just stand behind it and see it go whir off like that. We're not allowed to look outside or around the smart car. So I can do that, by the way. I'm a demotivational speaker, I decided. I can do that sort of thing with any object. It all leads to tar sands. It all leads to lithium mines, your iPod, iPad, etc., right to the lithium mine. Every object here, by the way, and I love the people who organize this, but I have to say, it fascinated me to see every object here is a kind of postmodern reproduction of something that was done naturally before. Yeah? So the tent could have been canvas. Well, if you're into saving animals, that could be bad. But now it's plastic, right? So on it goes. Okay, so demotivation, 6 minutes to motivate. To remotivate. What is to be done? Well, we have to think about the singularity again in a different way. My suggestion is that we don't have to wait for a singularity to arrive. We are always already in the middle of a singularity. And that singularity is the state corporate space at the black hole at the center of this galaxy called the dominant order. Okay? So the way in which we're expected to be, how we're expected to act, how we dress, what we do, all of that, it's like we're sucked into this black hole. And it's really, really difficult to do anything other than what you're supposed to, right? We all know that. We all know that it's really hard. People don't like you when you don't do and act like you're supposed to. So most of us do, most of the time. Now, fortunately, Stephen Hawking discovered for us that black holes don't suck in everything. There's something called the Hawking radiation that flies out of there, right? That's the blue stuff at the top, if you can see it. So that tells us it's possible to escape the black hole, to escape the striated space, and to move towards other spaces. In order to do this, though, we have to challenge the idea of progress. I'll never use that word again. It looks so good at home. We have to actually, to progress, that is to survive and prosper, we have to stop doing progress. We have to progress beyond progress. We have to stop trying to apply technological solutions to technological problems. We have to stop trying to apply authoritarian solutions to problems created by the state. We have to stop trying to apply military solutions to global death machines. Yeah? We have to stop doing the same stuff again and again, because that's what keeps you in the black hole. This is where archaeotechnology comes in. I'm going to suggest most of the best technologies are not in the future, they're in the past. They've been buried over. They've been buried over by the system of states and corporations. Why? Because they make us too free. They're too sustainable. They make it really hard to control us. They make it really easy to have a decent life. So all that had to be destroyed. That had to be buried. Now our job is to dig it up. So no Hummer stretch limo. No smart car, we know why now. No plane. Even if you buy the offset credits, that crap is still flying in the atmosphere, as we all know. Instead, this, walking. An ancient technology, which so many people do not use these days, is another thing that's been buried. It's almost like you're some kind of maniac, you know? Well, I'll drive you to the store. Well, it's 2 blocks away. I can walk. No, 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 no. And I don't just mean like these folks may get in the Hummer, drive to the airport, and fly back to Toronto, right? After they're done in Florida here. I mean walking all the time. okay? Walking all the time. How do we figure that out? How can I walk all the time? How can I make it so I never need to get in a plane? First of all, cities got to go. Too big, too ugly, can't grow food there. Takes too long to get across it. All right, this thing, toast. This thing, suburban home. Okay, there's some greenery there, but you're not allowed to have a garden or chickens because your neighbors complain too much. You can't even hang out laundry. You're not allowed to live in the suburbs, and you're most certainly not allowed to work there, right? Because the zoning doesn't allow it. You have to go to the city and go back and forth. It's toast too. Goodbye, suburb. What we actually need to, I've been to this place, it's a great place, Dancing Rabbit Eco Village. What we really need to do is reintegrate our lives. We need to have it so that we are producing, consuming, hanging out with our family and friends in the same places. And then, if I've got everything and everyone I need, I don't have to fly to Thailand to have fun. And I don't have to fly to Bolivia to make sure the workers' revolt is put down by paramilitaries, so that I can get the lithium to keep my smart car company going. I don't have to do any of that crap. I can hang around at home and be a human being. So really, what I'm suggesting is that we have to become nomads once again. And I said before, it's actually possible to move between these spaces, and that's why I said it then. So now we know who these people are. We know where they're coming from and where they're going. They are us. They are walking away from the dominant order, and they are heading over that hill to find other people like them to live differently and better. Now this sounds like utopian, right? Sounds crazy. Capitalism sounded crazy when it first started out. They didn't say, hey, why don't you just leave your home and family and come to my factory, and you can work there, and I'll half kill you, and I'll take most of the profit, I'll get really rich. You'll be screwed. You'll never see your family, and I'm going to be really happy, okay? Okay, if they'd done it that way, people would have said, that's nuts, I'll never do it, right? So it isn't that crazy. It can be done. The other thing is that, we're not likely to get to the global brain, are we? We all know, especially young people today, know the world is screwed, right? There's economic meltdown, there's ecological catastrophe, there's this, uprisings left, right, and center. This world is toast, right? So if we don't choose to do this, we're going to be forced anyway, right? And at any rate, the middle classes of the global north are actually the 1%, right? Because most of the people in the world are already living more sustainably anyway. Most people don't have a car. Most people can't get on a plane, right? So I'm hopeful, even though it's difficult. And the reason I'm hopeful is because even McDonald's knows there's a little circle A in everyone. Thank you.